begin by thanking you for watching the videos. Thank you for your words of appreciation on the previous video, both on One Guru and One Guru. Thank you for your love, care and encouragement. In this episode, Father Nelson will explain to us about the Assumption of Mary. It is my pleasure to welcome you on this video to reflect on Mother Mary. So, Father, every 15th August, our Catholic Church celebrates the Feast of Assumption of Mary. Many churches and chapels in Goa are dedicated to Assumption of Mary. But there's a bit confusion regarding the Assumption. There are some issues, Father. How can Mary be assumed in heaven? Why should Mary die if she was free from original sin and its stain? What are the earliest surviving references to Mary's Assumption? How did Pope Pius XII prepare for the definition of Assumption? And what scriptural issues is there for the teaching? Can you just explain to us, Father?
Okay. The Feast of Assumption of Mother Mary, it has a tradition of 2000 years. In the beginning, during early Christians' time, it is called oral tradition, meaning it was passed down from mouth to mouth, from one generation to another generation. This belief in the Ascension of Mary is totally based on the resurrection of Jesus and our resurrection. That's how it came up. The belief of resurrection is totally based on the scriptures, and it is a strong foundation of our faith. But Assumption of Mary, olden days, it was called by different names like commemoration, dormition, transitus or transition, passing over. But now it is celebrated as a solemnity.
Light on this oral tradition?
Okay. In the history of the church, we have two traditions. One tradition says that Mary, after the death of her son Jesus, lived in Ephesus. Ephesus in present times, it is in North Turkey. So it is believed that Mary, along with John, the favorite disciple of Jesus, went to Turkey, especially after the year 70 AD. In 70 AD, remember, Jerusalem was totally destroyed. So there is a belief that Mary and John went to Turkey and they ministered there, and Mary died there and she was assumed into heaven from this place in Turkey. Because they say that they found a tomb in Turkey. But there is another tradition, another story which says Mary lived in Jerusalem, she died in Jerusalem, and she was assumed into heaven from Jerusalem. But this story of Jerusalem comes in the picture only in the 6th century, because a tomb was found somewhere about 540, so in the 6th century in Jerusalem. So these are the two traditions that are there regarding Assumption.
Did the Assumption of Mary happen by her power or by the power of God?
Of course, Mary is not God. Only God has the power of ascension, power of assumption. Ascension in the case of Jesus. Jesus went up to heaven with his own power. But in the case of Mary, it is assumption, not by the power of Mary. Mary doesn't have that power. God, by his own grace, took Mary to heaven. She cannot take this mysterious flight to heaven with her own power. So it is very clear, it is by God's grace and by God's power.
New teaching given by Pope Pius XII.
See, as I said, because of this oral tradition, the belief in the Assumption of Mary was already believed by the people for so many years. The accusations and attacks came only after the official promulgation of this dogma. Pope Pius XII, November 1st, 1950, he issued a document called Munificentissimus Deus, number 44, in which he explained the dogma of Assumption. Only after 1950, after this promulgation, people started discussing and debating and even criticizing. but it was always believed in the church for 2000 years, which we call oral tradition and commonly believed by common people, that Mary was assumed into heaven.
What are the reasons given by Pope to believe this dogma?
I think Pope Pius XII gave 4 reasons. The first one could be the uninterrupted tradition of the church for so many years. They always believed in the assumption of Mary. The second could be this belief of assumption is also found in ancient liturgies, also found in Eastern churches. So that's a second reason. The third reason is we are certain about the tombs of apostles, but we are not 100% certain about the tomb of Mary. Though there are traditions about Ephesus and Jerusalem, but we are not 100% sure. So that could be another reason he gave. And finally, the assumption is also warranted in the scriptures. If you read the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, chapter 5, we have the story of Enoch, who was taken up, meaning in heaven. And also, we have the story of Prophet Elijah in the second book of Kings, chapter 2, where he too was taken up in heaven. So, there are also examples in the Old Testament in the Bible. So, these were the 4 reasons the Pope gave for the assumption.
Logical reasons for this dogma?
Oh, yes. See, the corruption of the body came in because of the consequence of original sin. All those who are touched by original sin will die someday. But we believe in the Immaculate Conception of Mother Mary, of which we shall make another video, I guess. So, since Mary was not touched by original sin, we believe that she was assumed into heaven. The second reason is she was filled with grace. And it is logical that a person filled with grace like Mary, being the mother of the Redeemer, she was very closely associated in this redemption work. And so it is rightful that she should be in heaven at the right hand of her Son Jesus, the Redeemer. So I guess these reasons are good enough to believe in the assumption of Mary, Mary being in heaven.
Does the dogma require us to believe that Mary died?
You see, in the ancient times when Christianity began, people had no controversy regarding the assumption. But there was a controversy regarding her death. Whether she died or whether she was asleep and in her sleep she was taken up to heaven. That was the controversy. But there was no controversy as far as assumption was concerned. Everybody believed. They accepted the fact that Mary was assumed into heaven. So when Pope Pius XII promulgated the dogma, he never spoke about, or he did not use the word resurrection. He used the word assumption. So commonly in the church we believe that Mary died. Now if you take the example of the 2 tombs, one in Jerusalem, one in Turkey, nobody goes and sleeps in the tomb. If there is tomb, that means somebody died. But these are common beliefs. We are still not 100% sure these tombs are of Mother Mary. Commonly we believe that she died and she was taken up or assumed into heaven. But even if we accept the theory that she died, her body remained uncorrupt. It looked fresh and her body was taken up to heaven. But it is also possible, like the Eastern churches, that in her sleep she was taken or assumed into heaven. So these are the 2 theories.
Mary died if she was free from its original sin.
See, St. Paul says in his letter to Romans chapter 5 verse 12, it's because of sin that death came in. And it is true that when there is sin, there is death. And we believe that Mary was without sin. We have this dogma of Immaculate Conception. But if you see it from the picture of Jesus and his redemption work, even Jesus was without sin, yet he died on the cross. So also Mary participates in the life and suffering and death of Jesus, even though she was part of this universal law of dying.
The earliest references to Mary's assumption?
We can go back right up to the 2nd and 3rd centuries, where there are apocryphal accounts of Transitus Mariae, stories of Mary about her assumption, and therefore History takes it back right up to the 2nd century. And somewhere about 350, there was one bishop, one saint by name Saint Epiphanius. He had written a lot of treatises on the heresies. He would fight all these heresies. And in one of his works, he talks about a group of women. This group is called some Collyridians. This group, even they had heard about Marian stories, they went round and told the people that Mary never died, that Mary was assumed in heaven. So this begins right in the 3rd century. So we have a history of this Mary's assumption, commonly believed, right from 2nd century, which was officially promulgated by Pope Pius XII in 1950. So you see, it has a lot of tradition.
Pope Pius prepared the definition of the Assumption.
In May 1946, Pope Pius XII decided to consult all the bishops and cardinals and lay leaders, and he consulted about and took their opinions about 1,181 people, all involving various cardinals, theologians, and everyone. Only 6 out of 1,181 people consulted, only 6 of them showed little bit of reservation about this dogma. But all others were in favor of this dogma. And therefore, with their support, he promulgated the dogma.
What is scriptural basis for this dogma?
Is it really necessary that every event, in order to be true, should be in the Bible? If that is the logic, then the journey of St. Peter and St. Paul going to Rome is not recorded in the Bible. Their martyrdom is not recorded in the Bible. Does that mean they were not martyred? So it can't be like that. There are lots of scriptural references in the book of Psalms, in the book of Song of Songs, in the book of Revelation. A lot of scriptural basis for the dogma of assumption.
Be bodily assumed into heaven?
Yes, of course. In the Bible, we have at least 5 references where people have been taken up to heaven.
We apply the teaching of Assumption in our everyday lives.
Death, be not proud, said John Donne, an English famous poet. These words also could be applied to Mother Mary. Mother Mary won victory over death. This is what we believe in this dogma of assumption. When we live our life here on earth, when we see suffering, when we see people dying, when we see so much pain, sometimes we feel life is meaningless. But when we focus on Mother Mary, on her assumption, it gives us hope. It gives us a kind of sense of victory, that one day we will be victorious just like Mother Mary, and because of God's love, because of God's grace, we too will be taken up to heaven. So this belief gives meaning to our life, and therefore it's so very important that we keep our eyes on God, we remain focused on God, and in this journey, Mother Mary helps us.
Father, every 15th August in India we celebrate Independence Day. So how does the Assumption of Mary help us, especially women?
Yes, for us Indians, it's a beautiful occasion because we have 2 celebrations merging together, the Independence Day and the Feast of Assumption. And on this Feast of Assumption, we believe that Mother Mary is so close to God in heaven, and the grace of God is pouring on her. And because of this grace, Mother Mary is so close to us. It's unfortunate that so many women in India are really suffering, being abused. And therefore, the Feast of Assumption tells these women that they have their own identity. and they have their own dignity. When they look at Mary, they receive hope. They are filled with a sense of identity and dignity. And this motivates them to move ahead in life. So it's very important that we keep our eyes on Mother Mary. What she has achieved, the way God blessed her, God will also surely bless women in India.
We hope now the mystery of Assumption is made simple to understand. Thank you for your patience to watch this video. Mother Nelson, for taking the trouble to help us to increase our faith and traditions. If you like this video, please like and share. Thank you and happy feast of Assumption of Mary. May Mother Mary intercede for us and bless us.